Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Kalk, and I am City Club's president. This is the City Club of Eugene's July 7th, 2023 program, Protecting Our Children Online. Today, City Club is coming to you live from the 5th Street Market District in the heart of downtown Eugene, and it's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all of our speakers and to those of you joining us in person, online, and over the radio. For 3 decades, the City Club of Eugene has remained dedicated to its founding mission to build community vision through open inquiry. In accordance with our mission and purpose, we hope to connect people throughout our community and across generations, identities, experiences, and perspectives. You are invited this week and every week to join us in this effort, to share your wisdom, learn something new, and take active steps to make a difference in this city and region we all love. Of course, we cannot do this work alone, and so I'd like to give a special thank you to our Platinum, Community, and Diamond sponsors. The Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, serving as a catalytic leader in creating a vibrant and diverse economy that drives economic opportunity and well-being. Kaiser Permanente, which exists to provide high-quality, affordable health care services and to improve the health of our members and the communities we serve. More information at www.kp.org. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically since 1876. Get more information at uoregon.edu. Peace Health has been proud to serve Eugene, Lane County, and beyond as your hometown healthcare provider for more than 80 years. The Peace Health mission is to keep you and your family healthy. Learn more at peacehealth.org. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. And thank you to the City of Eugene and Lane County for their support as well. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a longtime listener, I invite you to support our work by becoming an individual member, a business or community sponsor, or to suggest an idea for an upcoming program. You can do all of those things and more at thecityclubofeugene.org. That's cityclubofeugene.org. Your support and encouragement make these community conversations possible. And of course, this is not just about conversation. It's about taking that conversation and translating it into action. And it's our hope that with informed understanding of the various issues facing our community, you will engage on those issues. A word to our listeners about today's program. It will contain information about child sexual abuse and exploitation. We acknowledge it will be especially sensitive for some listeners and encourage you to take care in the way that is right for you. With that message, I'm going to turn it over to Joel Corin, head of our program committee and the coordinator of today's program. Joel.
Thank you. We all know the benefits of the computer, the benefits of the internet, but there are dangers also, particularly for our children. On August 6, 2021, Eugene Police Department arrested 4 men in separate cases for online sexual corruption of a child in the first degree. March 2nd, 2022, Eugene child care worker was sentenced to prison for sex abuse, including 4 victims under the age of 10. On March 24th, 2023, after 3-month-long undercover investigation, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office made 7 arrests throughout Oregon related to suspects' attempts to use the internet to meet young women. And as recently as June 27th, 2023, Clackamas County Sheriff arrested a man for trying to lure a child for purposes of sexual content after he responded to an undercover detective's online post saying that they were a 15-year-old girl. The sexploitation of youth in our state is not isolated or a dying trend. To the contrary, today's panelists will highlight the growing trend in how we engage and combat child sexual exploitation. Our first speaker today will be Supervisory Special Agent Ryan Dwyer. He's been with the FBI for 21 years and has led a wide range of criminal and terrorism investigations while stationed in California and Oregon. 2015, he was promoted and served in the Public Corruption/Civil Rights section at FBI headquarters. For the past 6 years, he has been the FBI resident agent in Eugene and Medford portions of the Portland field office. Our second speaker is Carrie Skinner, a former police officer who, with experience in emergency management and youth services. She has overseen school safety and security operations in the 4J School District. Before stepping into this role for Eugene schools, Carrie was in various emergency management positions with 2 other Oregon school districts and has law enforcement experience and as a non-sworn employee police officer and youth services worker. She was also an adjutant with the U.S. Marine, and she asked me to advise you that she's a much better speaker than her husband, the chief of police. Sarah Stewart, and he's a very good speaker, so Sarah Stewart is the executive director of Kids First, Lane County Children's Advocacy Center. Her journey to Kids First began as a child client and then a volunteer, and then she was hired in various positions and is now the executive director. Sarah has a heart for kids and firmly believes in the sentiment that abuse does not define you. Ryan, you're on.
Thank you, Joel. I think with Joel's introduction, I'll take this off for now. I'll assume you won't run me out of the room just yet anyway. So, no, thank you very much. I've had opportunities in the past to meet with the City Club and talk about various topics and the contributions of the FBI, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk to you about a very important topic, as Joel said, protecting our kids from online predators. It's particularly important to me as a law enforcement officer and as a father. I'll talk specifically about what we call in law enforcement online enticement. And as Joel mentioned, I supervise the FBI office here in Eugene and one in Medford as well. And I'll tell you, over the last several years, our team has just seen more and more cases come in. We work every day side by side with Sarah and her team, with Carrie and her team, and our local law enforcement partners to address these threats. So I'm very happy to be sharing this information with you. I appreciate the warning ahead of time because it can be hard to hear, but we do want to get details out there, and hopefully everybody here will leave better informed and better equipped to go help the kids in their life. So when law enforcement, when the FBI talks about online enticement, we're talking generally about an adult who contacts a child via the internet with the intent of committing a sexual act or an abduction. So, and according to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, sometimes called NCMEC, which is a information clearinghouse and resource center, it works closely with the FBI and law enforcement around the country in matters supporting child victims. So according to NCMEC, between 2019 and 2020, reports of online enticement increased 97.5%. It's almost doubled in 1 year. That obviously coincides in a time when a lot of our children's activities were moving online due to COVID. School was moving online. Our children were relying more and more on online interactions. But that trend didn't change. Last year, online enticement reports increased 82%. So I'm going to talk to you about the trend that's driving that increase in numbers and some of the crimes and what we are seeing here in Eugene specifically. And these numbers are alarming. The scenarios I discuss are alarming, may even be upsetting. I think it's important to go over these things because statistics tell us many of our children will be contacted online by somebody with criminal intent. And I don't say these things, my hope is not to scare people into running home and unplugging their Wi-Fi routers and snatching their kids' iPhones, right? So we've all heard the adage, we don't prepare the world for our kids, we prepare our kids for the world. And like it or not, the world our kids live in, the world they're going to build, depends more and more on online interactions. So we're also going to talk about ways to empower kids, conversations to have with them to help them avoid being victims and help encourage them to report if they have been victimized. And we'll talk about how all of us here can help hold predators accountable. So, as I said, I hope when we're done here, we'll all leave better equipped, and listeners will feel better equipped to have these conversations and more informed to have these conversations with the kids they love. So, I will also mention a few websites as we go through here. I think those will be posted on the City Club website, those URLs. So I hope you'll dig in and do some of your own research. So, as I mentioned, online enticement, broad category. It can involve anything from an adult contacting a child with the intent of meeting up with that child in real life, which is obviously a very alarming scenario. But what we're seeing overwhelmingly here in Oregon, and what we're seeing driving those numbers skyrocketing, is a crime called sextortion. And based on our limited time here today, I'm really going to focus on sextortion. And that's far and away the type of online exploitation we're seeing in this area here in Oregon more broadly. So sextortion, what is sextortion? It's a crime in which an adult convinces or tricks or coerces a child into providing an explicit image and then turns around and threatens to publicize that image in order to force the child to do what they request. So, and prior to 2022, it's not a new crime, but prior to 2022, victims were primarily girls. The motivation of the subjects was primarily to get more and more sexually explicit material for their own gratification, or to build libraries of what we call child sex abuse material, or what in some circles is called child pornography, with the purpose of collecting that and potentially trading that with other subjects and offenders in the dark web or other forums. And I will tell you here, locally, we saw victims, and we have seen victims as young as 10 years old. So that should let you know there is no age too young to talk to your kids about this. So, and while this type of sextortion hasn't decreased, what drove a lot of the increases in the last year was financially motivated sextortion. And this targeted, and actually 79% of sextortion offenses reported last year were financially motivated. And this overwhelmingly targeted boys, age 14 to 17. And I'm talking here about girls and boys, but I'll let you know our trans kids are also targeted. So how do subjects do this? How does this happen? First, I think it's very important to know and realize that the bad guys are operating where our kids do. If your kid's on Snapchat, Instagram, other social media sites, messaging apps, WhatsApp, Kik, friend-finding sites, Omegle, Roblox, other gaming sites, where our kids are operating online, there's a very good chance there are predators in those spheres as well. So, and typically how a subject contacts a kid is they'll pose as an age-appropriate child and contact them on social media. If they're not, the subject's not from this area, they'll spend time researching this area, they'll learn the schools, they'll learn the activities and other things in the area, and use that to attempt to connect with the child, build a relationship with the child. They'll likely begin to flirt. They'll try to get the kid to share more and more information. They may try to convince a child to provide more revealing. They may exchange non-explicit images and then try to convince a child to share more and more revealing material. Hey, show me a picture of when you were at the beach, or can you pose this way, or look at me that way. All while complimenting them, perhaps buying them online or sending them online gift cards. If you're familiar with a pattern of child abuse, it's grooming in every sense. It's grooming behavior. The subject may even share an explicit image that they claim is of themselves in hopes of getting the child to reciprocate. And the more the child shares, the more they're at risk of being manipulated. Subjects will often move between platforms. So if they connect on Snapchat, they may suggest they move the conversation to text messaging or move it to another messaging app. And they do this for several reasons. First off, they may be trying to obscure their identity, and the other platform might make that easier. They also want more digital hooks into the victim, right? They want to learn more about the victim. They want more visibility of the victim's friends list or their contact list. And they may find it easier to capture and the information the child shares using a different platform. That is a big warning sign we do look for. So the moment, in this grooming, these types of interactions may go on for hours, they may go on for months. I will say in the cases involving financially motivated sextortion targeting young boys, it happens in a very condensed timeline we have seen typically. It can happen in one night. Child's contacted 8 o'clock. They provide an image at 10 o'clock, they're being extorted by midnight. It can happen that quickly. In other cases, where the motivation is not financial, it can go on quite long. And the moment the victim provides an explicit image or refuses to comply with the subject, the extortion begins. The subject threatens to send a compromising image to the child's friends list, their family, their church, teachers, college admissions, using all this information they've gathered about the child. Commonly they'll send a screenshot just to show, hey, this is your friends list, I've captured it. And we've begun to see cases in which fake pictures are used, generated using real social media pictures of the child, and then generated to make it look explicit, and then sent to the child with a threat that it will be sent to the people that matter in their lives and their circles. So, and you can imagine how incredibly terrifying that is for a young person, right? They were flirting with somebody, that they liked, maybe they were doing something mom and dad wouldn't completely approve of, but they trusted this person, and then now all of a sudden their world has been shaken up. And the subject's not going to give the child time to react, right? They're going to pressure them to respond immediately. If you don't send me money immediately, if you don't send me more explicit images immediately, I'm publicizing this, I'm sending it out. They don't want that child to have time to gather their thoughts and talk to a trusted adult. They may use other fake accounts if they get blocked to get back at that child. And they can be unrelenting. And oftentimes, sadly, the child feels they have no choice but to comply. And when they do, sadly, the victimization can last months. It can last a long time, and usually only ends with the intervention of an adult. We do know that for a fact. Adult or law enforcement intervention is almost always what ends these patterns. So I think Carrie is going to talk a little bit more about what we as adults can look for, so we can help be that adult to help these kids out. I'm going to talk to you real quick, just what we in law enforcement recommend for a response. First off, a child comes to you. I think Sarah's going to talk a little bit how to talk to a child who's been a victim, but we're to help that child stop the contact, right? Help them take their devices. Don't delete the accounts, don't delete posts, because at this point they may be evidence of a crime. And then help that child contact law enforcement. Contact any law enforcement agency. We'll be happy to get the phone call and help respond. Contact the FBI. I'll talk in a moment what the FBI will do if we're contacted. But real quick, I also want to hit on who exactly is doing this right now. And I will say in the cases of sextortion, where the internet has really removed borders, we are finding more and more individual subjects targeting dozens of children across the country and internationally, in some cases hundreds of children. So one individual anywhere in America has the ability to reach out and touch, or anywhere in the world, honestly, can reach out and touch hundreds of children and affect hundreds of children. And financially motivated sextortion is overwhelmingly coming from foreign countries. Very little of that is coming from American subjects. And this internationalist cross-border aspect is one of the reasons the FBI and the Department of Justice are so heavily focused on this crime. Additionally, of course, it's a federal crime to possess, distribute, or manufacture child pornography. So if you do, when the FBI is involved, I'll tell you our first focus is going to be protect the child, like stop the victimization. Special agent, a victim specialist will meet with that family. We'll make sure they have the support needed to get the child out of that cycle of victimization. We'll have a special forensic interview working with Sarah's team or a similar group. We'll look through the child's devices and probably their social media accounts with the goal of identifying the subject and cracking through whatever layers of anonymization they may have attempted to use. And I'll share this just on a little more hopeful note before I pass off to Carrie is, well, to the degree you can draw hope from this, increasingly when we have these sextortion cases, when we find the subject, we're finding a lot of other victims. And we will get agents and victim specialists out to those families too. So I say that to say, a report that comes in here in Eugene, Oregon, when that child faces that challenge, hopefully with a supportive guardian or parent comes and makes that report, we may be helping to break a cycle of abuse for dozens and dozens of other kids around the world. Their families may not know what's going on, and it gives us a chance to go help those kids too, and go find the guy that's doing this. And they're overwhelmingly male subjects, I'll say that too. So I think my colleagues have several other topics to cover. I'm honored to be doing this alongside two people that do amazing work for children here in Eugene. So I will hand the microphone now to 4J Public Safety Director Carrie Skinner. I will say, if I want help and advice on keeping my kids safe, Carrie's the one I would call. So I think I'm privileged to hand it off to her. So.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ryan, for the introduction, and thank you, City Club, for having us today. My name is Carrie Skinner, and I am the Director of Risk Management and School Safety for the Eugene School District. And I'm happy to be here today to talk about a really controversial topic that's impacting a lot of our children across the country, as Ryan mentioned. And sextortion is a big term, and a lot of families, a lot of people in your social circles may say, well, that's not happening in Eugene, Oregon. That's not happening to my kids. That's not happening to people I know. It is. And I'm telling you it is because we're seeing it all too often. We have youth in 4J. We have youth in Bethel School District. We have youth in Springfield School District, charter schools, public, private. It has no boundaries. Youth are sending nude images to one another like a lot. So how can we as parents, how can we as guardians, how can we as family members get involved? How to talk to your children. I feel like this is a conversation that, you know, as a young adult, maybe my parent didn't have with me because it wasn't as a hot topic. We didn't have cell phones when I was a kid. I don't know if you did, but I didn't. And we didn't have camera-enabled devices as readily available as we do today. We have computers for students now that when we went through COVID-19, we started issuing district-issued devices on a one-on-one basis to children so they could do their remote learning. And what that does is there's cameras enabled on each of those devices. So you don't even have to think of it as just, it's got to be a cell phone. It's an iPad. It's a computer laptop. They're using it through gaming platforms, as Ryan mentioned. So anytime there's a screen involved, and it's in a private area, like a bedroom, you're at risk. It's manipulation. It is people who are skilled manipulators that are accessing, and I say your child, whoever you are close to and is a youth. So how to talk to your children. I feel like that's a really easy thing to think you're going to have as a conversation, but it's hard to drum up the words. So I want to try and talk with you about just the power of a picture. You know, we've seen throughout time, recently, usually elections, that there's an embarrassing photo of somebody's something. That's only magnified nowadays. And so thinking about having that conversation with your youth about the power of a picture and what it could do to humiliate you as a youth, you as a family, you as a community. And even though you may believe as a youth that photo is just between you and your friend Ryan, you and your friend Sarah, it's never private. It always gets shared. And the same thing is true with even text messaging. If you think about it, youth are sharing screenshots of text messages just like they're sharing images with one another. And it feels like a gotcha, haha, that was Sarah, and it's meant to humiliate. That is the intent of sextortion. So have that conversation with the youth, be direct, and be candid. You know, that's the best piece of advice I can provide up front. Also, you know, what's possible when you send a photo, and what could it be used for? And I'm going to share an instance that's happened recently, and it's not just one, so I feel comfortable sharing it with you today. There's an incident going on where a middle school student receives a direct message saying, hey, I want to be your friend on Snapchat. Hey, I want to be your friend on Instagram. So they said, well, great, yeah, I want to have more followers, because that's the name of the game for youth right now. They want to have as many followers that are following their page on Instagram, following their persona on that social media platform. And so when they get those added followers, It's not someone they know. And it's really like, as maybe when I was growing up, my mom told me, stranger danger, don't talk to people you don't know. That's changed in this digital way, where you still should be enforcing the don't talk to people you don't personally know. And how do you get verification? Well, I know that Sarah added me on a social media platform. I know Sarah because Sarah plays soccer with me on my team, Pilata. I know Sarah because she attends my faith-based organization. I know Sarah because she goes to my school. You have to have personal verification that that's truly Sarah, because what people are doing is purporting themselves to be Sarah, and then they'll call it catfishing you to believe they're Sarah, but they're not, and then they trick you into sending them images. So making sure that kids know that's happening, and that is what just happened recently to two middle school students. And they sent an image of themselves standing in their bedrooms, and they weren't nude, and they had someone alter images. And this is still being reported to law enforcement, but they shared those images and someone else edited those images and they look real. And so then the bad actor comes in play and says, give me $25 every month or I'll tell everyone you know. I'll send those images of you to everyone you know. In a middle schooler's mind, in an adult's mind, I would be terrified. I know that's not a real picture of me. I know I didn't get nude and send that image out, but you don't know that. And so that's what these actors are preying upon, is the fact that you will say, I'll give you the $25 a month. Please don't do that. I do not want my parents, my grandparents, my teachers, my principal, my community to know that that image is mine. It's embarrassing. So those manipulators are using those tactics with your children. And I want to really add on to what Ryan said. Come forward to me as a parent and talking with your children and making sure they truly know. I may be mad, but I will always be there for you. I will always be there to support you, and I will walk with you, because there are signs and symptoms that you can see where a youth is spiraling out of control because they may have shared that image, or they may have been a recipient of a manipulated image like I shared, and they're being sextorted for financial gain, they're being sextorted out of bullying, or from a previous boyfriend, girlfriend, partner. So again, just having that conversation with kids initially, and how those images can be used. So some of the things that you can tell about a youth who's being potentially victimized is signs of depression. They're more withdrawn than they normally have been in the past. They're acting more in seclusion for, more alone time in a private area in their bedrooms, right? Those are signs and symptoms that maybe you should say, as a parent, a guardian, someone who loves them, what's going on? Have the conversation. Go up into their space. Ask them to come engage with you. Start just being meddlesome, if you will. And, one thing that we have as a household rule, we don't allow digital devices in bedrooms. That's a hard and fast rule in my household. That will never change. When my son's 18, he's 16 now, that will not change until he is outside of my home. Everybody has a different choice in their family for what works for them, but I've seen what's behind the door number 2, and I'm not willing to let that inside my room. And so my kids have to have their digital devices, iPads, computers for school, and their cell phones in a public area of our home. I shut off our Wi-Fi after 10 p.m. They cannot access our Wi-Fi internet. They're smart TVs. These are digital devices. They can get on YouTube. They can game. There's things that you can do, and we are here to help you. If you need assistance, you can contact me through 4J, through I guess I can give my email. It's skinner_k@4j.lane.edu. And just in closing, again, talking about what you can do, make your social media accounts private for your youth. Ensure you're checking. If you don't know how to check, Find another person who you think you can rely upon to help you. Go to Best Buy, talk to the Geek Squad, as they call it, and ask them for help. Go to a school district, talk to somebody who might have some help for you. Don't share personal information at all. Like, my name's Carrie Skinner, I live at this address, I can be found I participate in these types of sporting events, I'm with Pilata. That's how they're starting to follow your activities and create more content about you. I already shared the only connecting with known friends, but block any friend requests that come to your child, and again, having that conversation with them. Don't add them if you don't personally know them. They are not good actors. You don't know them. And be suspect. And Ryan hit on this. Be suspect if somebody tries to friend you and ask you to go off platform. Why? Why are they trying to get you off platform? The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, they run software on all United States server devices like Instagram, like Facebook. They don't operate on device apps like TikTok, Telegraph, things of that nature. So Discord, there will be times that bad actors will ask you, hey, we're playing Roblox, would you want to go off topic onto Discord and talk with me some more? Yeah, sure, why not? The why not is because now law enforcement can't find you, potentially. So again, let's be engaged in the conversation with our kids, and let's start to have those conversations early and often. It's not a one and done. And then just audit all digital communication. I randomly check my kids' devices. Again, this is your personal preference, and what I do for me may not work for you, but I audit my kids' devices. Those are my devices. I own them, and I routinely inspect them. All of their platforms, all of their notes, their camera, their calculator. The calculator app is a hidden vault for extra images that are, generally speaking, nude images. Who has 2 calculator apps on their cell phone? Nobody doing good things. So there's a lot of help we can offer. If you're looking for some support or additional conversation, feel free to contact me. And I'd like to introduce the amazing and talented Sarah Stewart with Kids First. Thank you again.
Hey everyone, this is my very first City Club. I'm super excited to be here. I don't know if you're excited that I'm not talking to you about child exploitation. However, before we change topics, for reference, I am Sarah Stewart. I'm from Kids First. We're the Children's Advocacy Center serving Lane County. I'm going to talk to you today about Children's Advocacy Centers and about Kids First specifically and how we work with this great team. Before we change topics, I wanted to just add, because my colleagues here gave you a lot of great advice about talking to kids and protecting kids, and I think the only thing I would add is that for parents and adults, it's really easy to tell kids how to behave online, but we also need to model that when it comes to adding people that you don't know and even oversharing on social media. Like, that is influencing how our children are behaving on social media, and I think we see a lot of it and we experience a lot of it in the do what I say, not as I do. We know, I am also a parent, my child's 4, so it's different, but it doesn't always work. And so we really do need to model that as well. So for Kids First, why am I here today? I am here because we work together as a team when cases like this are happening, when there are concerns about issues of child abuse. And that includes exploitation like you're hearing about today. I can tell you that for Lane County, we're the only CAC, Children's Advocacy Center, CAC, serving Lane County, and we see between 600 and 700 children from across the county each year. I can tell you, and I don't know if this will make you feel better or worse, but when it comes to the sextortion cases that you've heard a lot about today, that is a very small percentage of the kids that we're seeing. Usually over half of the kids that we're seeing every year are seen for concerns of child sexual abuse, often hands-on child sexual abuse. That said, technology issues, devices, social media, it really intersects with the abuse that we're seeing, child sexual abuse and domestic violence. We see kids who are witnessing domestic violence as well, and technology is involved in those cases as well. So I have just a couple minutes to kind of give you a primer on Kids First and how we fit into this. And so I think the easiest way to do that is to tell you what it was like in Lane County and for Lane County kids before Kids First existed. And so before, when a child would disclose sexual abuse, they would probably disclose it to a parent or maybe to a teacher, a trusted adult, right? That person might talk to them, interview them, especially if it's a teacher. Then they might report it to law enforcement or child welfare. So then that child, and typically the typical child that we serve is a 9-year-old girl who was sexually abused by a family member. So kind of keep that age in mind when we're talking about the services. And so then that child would go to a police station or maybe an FBI office and be interviewed by law enforcement. And then if child welfare was involved, they would go there and be interviewed by them. In sexual abuse cases, a medical exam and medical care is really indicated, and so they'd have to go to the ER where they would also be interviewed, and this really continues to the courthouse and beyond. And so what we found, and what really drove this CAC model, is that was traumatizing for children, right? And it often could be more traumatizing than the abuse itself, which is not what we as a system want to do. And it also didn't create very strong cases when you have a bunch of people who are interviewing kids, maybe in a leading way, maybe in a repetitive way, maybe not in a developmentally sound way, especially with young kids, then you just don't build a very strong case. So kids and families were being harmed, and offenders weren't being held accountable. So Kids First came to our community in 1994. We've been serving kids here since then. And we were one of the first 100 children's advocacy centers in the nation. Now there's about 1,000. National best practice when serving child victims of abuse is Kids First and CACs. And in our state, actually, our services and the team response that we provide is required by statute. Doesn't mean it's funded, but it is required by statute. So when a kiddo comes in to Kids First, they are referred by law enforcement. So after, what it really should work now is if someone's at 4J, for example, and they disclose to a teacher, that teacher believes them. They listen to them. They don't interview them, but they listen to them. And they get all of this information, and they support them, and they let them know that they're going to report this information to law enforcement or child welfare, to someone who can help. And that is when we get involved. Law enforcement reaches out to us. We schedule an assessment for that child and their supportive family members to come into Kids First, where they receive a forensic interview. The forensic interview is a one-on-one conversation with one of our interviewers. We have 3, and that is audio and video recorded. It's in, a small room that can probably feel like a therapy type of room. So it's really a child-friendly environment, and it's audio and video recorded, and law enforcement's observing it. So they get their questions answered. The investigation in their part, the child's statement to police, is completed without law enforcement interviewing the child. Child welfare is involved, then they are also observing it. So that reduces that interviewing. And then just the fact that it's audio and video recorded reduces that duplication in interviewing. We also have advocates. We have 6 right now who really help walk children and families through the process and really introduce all of the folks who they're going to be working with at Kids First, and their very different roles. Law enforcement versus our medical team versus our interviewer, and helping them understand. I think a misconception when it comes to child abuse is that, one of the things I think that people don't expect when it comes to child abuse is that most of the children and families that we work with have absolutely no experience with the criminal justice system. They have no idea what to expect. You assume and you hope, right, that if your child discloses they were sexually abused, that person gets arrested, goes straight to prison for a long time, and that's just not how it works. And so having an advocate who's really there to kind of talk them through that process and provide that criminal justice support is critical. And then we also have medical providers on site. And so those folks are observing the interview, they're deciding on the medical needs, and then they're doing an exam. What I can tell you is that CSI is leading us wrong. We don't have physical evidence in pretty much any of these cases, and that is great. That is great because that means that kids' bodies are safe. They're okay. You can't look at them and let them and tell that something happened to them. And that is so reassuring to children and their families. And it's important for law enforcement to know, it's important in prosecution, but really those exams really look like a well-child checkup. They are head to toe. But then kids also have a chance to talk to medical providers about concerns about their body, about sexuality or gender identity related questions. Like once they've had this full interview, they get to talk to a provider about things that they wouldn't have been comfortable talking to their PCP about. So those are kind of our core services. We also host grand jury hearings at our center. Those are they're just in a conference room. So they're not at the courthouse. That's the alternative, right? Is you go to the courthouse for grand jury. And so for most of our kids, that's really the closest that they get to a courtroom. And finally, last year, we launched an on-site therapy program. And so our kids, when they're coming in for their first assessment, get an evidence-based mental health screening, and then they're referred to our therapy program, where then they get evidence-based treatments to help them heal from abuse. And so that is our goal, right? We provide this intervention that helps children and families, doesn't re-traumatize them. We do it as a team to help have the best outcomes for children and families, and now we get to continue to see them at no cost to them to provide evidence-based treatments to help them go on and heal from abuse and live healthy lives. And so that's really our goal, and that's why I was here with you today, and thanks for your time.
We will begin our Q&A in just a moment, but first I'd like to thank the businesses and in-kind sponsors whose support helps to make City Club possible. Thank you to our gold sponsors, Network Charter School, Homes for Good, Hirschner Hunter LLC, and Evans, Elder, Brown, and Subert. Thank you also to our in-kind sponsors, KRVM 91.9 Radio, Pack Info and Simplified Computing LLC, Dotson's Photography, the Ninkasi Better Living Room, and Claim 52. Also, a special thank you to our award-winning public radio station, KLCC FM 89.7, for airing City Club programs Mondays at 7 p.m. For those listening at home right now, your household is one of several thousand tuning into City Club on KLCC. We love that you're here. You can also find all recent City Club programs archived on KLCC, as well as on our YouTube channel and as podcasts. We'll take a brief break, and then we'll get back to the last part of our program, where you'll be invited to ask questions of our speakers. Thanks very much.
Welcome back to City Club of Eugene and our program with FBI Supervisory Special Agent Ryan Dwyer, Carrie Skinner, 4J School Board Director of Public Safety, and Sarah Stewart from Kids First Executive Director. Our first question is by President Andrew Colick.
And actually, it's coming to us online, from
Online.
everyone watching online. One of our board members actually says sometimes people in the community have concerns about kids' safety, but may not be parents themselves. They may find it harder to engage or intervene for fear of overstepping. So do you have any advice for those concerned community members who aren't parents?
I'll chime in briefly, and then I'll hand it to Carrie and Sarah. And I think that's a great question. I think it's absolutely marvelous that someone who is not a parent still cares enough to think about this topic and think of the kids in the circle. And I would say, yeah, if you have nieces and nephews perhaps you're concerned about, it may be best in your family to talk to their parents first, but talk to them, talk to them. Obviously we see a dark side of this that not everybody, luckily not everybody gets to or has to see. So for me, it feels very imperative to, perhaps hopefully tactfully step on toes if you need to, because conversations just need to happen with kids. And I will say, NCMEC, as you've heard mentioned a few times here, their website, NetSmarts, NETSMARTZ, has tremendous conversation starters, age appropriate. You can look at and find what fits, as does FBI.gov, sextortion or /sextortion. There are some I think really useful conversation starters on there. So.
Thank you. So I would agree with what Ryan said. As also a concerned, aunt, uncle, friend, family member, talk to the parent first. I think that offline, that is the most appropriate. So you're not meddling per se, but still another tactic could be, I act dumb all the time. Tell me more about that. What's going on? I had no idea. What are the trends these days? Ask lots of curious questions, even if you know the answer. And I feel like kids will divulge because they want to, I know what's going on social media. Let me tell you. Great, I want to know. And then, have that conversation about, do you think it's safe to have a cell phone in your bedroom at night when you sleep? Oh, so you don't have an alarm clock in your room? Oh, okay, good to know. Those are some things that you can still say, and then follow up with a family member who might be the parent or the guardian. But still, I would agree with Ryan in addressing the conversation, because these are vulnerable human beings that need a pro-social adult to interact in their life, and you may be that only one person. So take that responsibility and act upon it. I would agree also with Ryan a lot. And NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, has really great videos. And they've gotten a little bit better with their videos that are socially, emotionally appropriate for nowadays, that really kids can relate to. It's not something that was produced 20 years ago that you might be showing that's a little bit dated. It's actually pretty current. So I think that's a really great website and site to sort.
I would just add that, it's just a really great question. And what we tell folks when we are meeting with them, when we do tabling events, is as parents to talk to your kids about having 5 safe adults in their life. Like, that's really a goal. It shouldn't just be your parents, because there are some things they might not feel comfortable talking to you about. And then we know that sometimes parents or caregivers also abuse their children. And so you really want to have 5, at least 3 safe adults. And those might be teachers, aunts, cousins, adult cousins, those other folks that they can talk to if there's ever something that they don't feel comfortable talking to you about, and giving those other options. The other thing that I would add, and I don't have a date for you quite yet, but we just yesterday had our team trained on Protect Our Children. It's a darkness to light, evidence-based child sexual abuse prevention training, and they were all trained as trainers. So we're going to be offering that training to our community. It's for adults. It's not just for parents. It's for adults. It's actually a lot for people who work within agencies that work with kids. So daycare providers, camp counselors, those folks on things that we can do as adults to protect kids from child sexual abuse. It's evidence-based, and it's been studied quite a bit over the years, even by our friends at the University of Oregon. And so it's a really good way for parents, non-parents, other adults to help and to get more information on how to help.
Two things. One, on behalf of people of my generation, I'd add grandparents to that list
Yes.
of people. And secondly, a follow-up question. At what age do you talk to your kids?
Oh, let me start with this one. I think it's never too early to start. I think I might have already said this. I have a 4-year-old, and I've already talked to her about it. I'm not talking to her about the social media stuff, but this comes up a lot where people, wonder, and not that I haven't wondered myself, like, what's too young? I don't want to, I don't want to scare my kids. But we have books that are just talking about body safety, and it talks about. We have another one that talks about consent, but it just talks about different parts of your body, and I can give my email address if people want book recommendations.
Sure.
But these are books for like 2, 3, 4-year-olds about consent, but it has nothing to do with anything sexual at all. It's like talking to your kids about consent, talking to your kids about all the parts of their bodies and the proper names for them are things that you can do to protect your kids without talking to them about child sexual exploitation, and it's never too early.
And I would agree with what Sarah said as well. And you think about, ask a rhetorical question, what age do you have a child holding a device that can access the internet? Whether it's a TV, a smart TV, you can access YouTube, and kids typically at young ages are watching YouTube videos. YouTube has a chat feature. So again, people are asking, send me images, and they're sneaky. This is their full-time jobs. They are excellent at their craft, and they know what is age appropriate for a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 20-year-old, really. So, I don't think it's ever too early. I would agree with Sarah in the sense that you need to be having age-appropriate conversations with youth about internet usage, inappropriate device usage, because they're using the devices. Parents, guardians, grandparents, anyone who's taking care of a child for any amount of time is bound to say, here, watch a video, I need to go do something for a minute. And that is happening. So if that's happening, we need to intervene and make sure kids have the tools to be successful.
Hard to add to that. I mean, I would echo, yes, obviously, I don't think there's an age too early to talk to kids about it. Obviously, having age-appropriate conversations is important from my perspective. Focusing the conversation and doing it repeatedly, so there's an expectation that there will always be an open line of communication. I talked a lot today about sextortion, right? That is the threat that has skyrocketed when it comes to online exploitation. In 5 years, it might be something different. So I can't have that specific conversation right now, but what I want my kids to know is that whatever happens, if they've encountered something online or in real life that leaves them feeling in danger, they can talk to me about it. I don't want them to feel, we don't want any of the kids in our lives to feel like they have to go through any of this alone. So yeah, I think no age too early, I guess.
Thank you. Marty?
My name is Marty Ravitz, a City Club member for many years. We've been talking, and I think that the adults in the room at least feel that we've learned a lot that was shocking and surprising to us. You've been talking, all of you, about help for individual children, both prevention and support. And I wonder if, I know for adults who've been traumatized, there are support groups and grief groups, et cetera. Is there anything in the curriculum when children are learning in their classrooms about computers and devices to help them beware of this kind of exploitation? And Sarah, are there any support groups for children together, or is this too personal and painful?
Okay. So I'll start with that, with curriculum. Yes, there is curriculum, and school districts across the state of Oregon, as well as other school districts outside of other states, are generally speaking required. It's maybe entitled something else. In Oregon, the Department of Education requires all Oregon state schools that receive public funds to have what we would call Aaron's Law, and that is a technology component that you're referring to. Now, you know, there's guidelines for what the health teacher or the PE teacher or the advisory teacher is to talk about, and we've set up modules for these conversations. So what you may experience in 4J may be a little bit more, I'd say, unique or changed for curriculum at Bethel versus Springfield School District, and that's specific to your community, and the Department of Education allows for deviations in the curriculum.
As far as support groups, we don't have support groups for children. We have support groups for parents whose kids have experienced sexual abuse. What I found, this is my 12th year at Kids First, and what I found is the interest in support groups has really waned over time. People are way more interested in individual therapy, which is why we haven't launched a kid support group yet, and because, as I told you, we just recently launched our kids therapy. That said, I know at least at our at Ophelia's Place, one of our nonprofit colleagues, they have support groups for kids, and actually a number of different groups for kids, but a support group for kids, and I think it's for kids who've experienced trauma. So it's not necessarily sexual abuse specifically, but for kids who've experienced trauma. So I would certainly check into that. I'm not sure of other local resources for that.
We have time for one more quick question with even quicker answers.
Thank you, Joel. Back when I was in high school, the Supreme Court ruled that simulated pictures of child sexual exploitation were lawful. We didn't think too much about it at the time because Print Shop Deluxe couldn't create a realistic picture, but of course AI tools today can create very realistic pictures. And I wondered if any of you could comment on both the potential uses of AI for bad or potential uses of AI for good in terms of rooting out this type of abuse. Thanks.
So you asked for a short answer, then you brought AI up. So, wow.
I didn't ask the question.
Okay, no, thank you. It's an excellent question. I will say, the case law, any case is going to be, it's going to depend on a lot of factors, whether or not an AI generated or a quote unquote deepfake picture can be considered child pornography or contraband under the law. I will say, I'll go back to what I referenced before. If a report comes to the FBI, and I think most of our law enforcement partners would agree with this, our focus is going to be to support the child. Whether the prosecutive outcome, hopefully we're hoping for the best outcome and the best sense of justice could be delivered, but our first priority is to help the child and make sure they're supported and they're out of that pattern of abuse. AI itself, obviously the use of AI is not illegal. Maintaining or keeping track of innovations and how they're being used to facilitate crimes is certainly a priority of the FBI, and we know online targeting of children is one of the many ways criminal actors are using AI. So we are looking at tools to counter that as well. So.
Great. That's all the time we have for questions today. Please join me in thanking our speakers. This has been our July 7th, 2023 conversation at the City Club of Eugene with FBI Supervisory Special Agent Ryan Dwyer, Carrie Skinner, the 4J School District Director of School Safety and Security Operations, and Sarah Stewart, the Kids First Executive Director. Please join City Club next week, July 14th, for a legislative session update or recap of the 2023 Oregon legislative session. That's next Friday, July 14th. A special thanks to all City Club volunteers who made this and all of our programs possible. Lastly, as you know, the City Club of Eugene is a nearly all volunteer independent nonprofit organization, and without our members and volunteers, we couldn't do what we do. And this week, we'd like to once again recognize Joel Corin. He's the leader of our program committee. He puts on programs like this week in, week out, and we couldn't do it without Joel. So thank you, Joel. Thank you finally to this week's new and renewing members and donors. Especially thank you to our members who have contributed during the City Club's annual campaign, which is on right now, and your support makes our work possible. Thank you for joining us at the City Club of Eugene. See you all next week.